Hello, everybody. Welcome to. I was just off put then because now on Zoom it's got a new function where it tells you that recording is in progress. So recording is in progress, and you are here with myself, Lisa Davies, on our Get a Life moment for today. And I am delighted to be joined by Dr Sandra McCutcheon. Welcome, Sands. How are you today?
I'm really good, and I love that we're laughing at that funny start, that sort of leveling down. So I'm really well, and I'm glad to be here.
I love that. You know, you're trying to be really professional, and we've both got our lippy on and all the rest of it. Got my studio lights on, and then we get some random voice from Zoom just chipping in. But hey ho, that makes it all the more human. So we've known each other a little while now through the Wellness Network and the wonderful work that you do. But for those people who have not yet come across your magical work, who is Dr. Sandra McCutcheon?
That's a fascinating question. And I'll maybe share how I arrived at what I arrived at. So when I was asked that sort of question, you know, I noticed an instant reaction that I should say something really flash, that I should come out with something really groundbreaking, and people say, "Oh wow, isn't she fab?" And so you see that language choice of should, you know, that was an instant reaction, and I thought, well, actually, for those that know me, they'll know that I'm not really flash. I'm quite a simple, uncomplicated person, and just like all of us, I'm probably a mixture of many things, actually. And that who am I think there's layers to that question. That's what I discovered when I created a little space over that. Oh yes, should say something really fancy and clever, and oh, I'm just this. And I'm like, hang on, let's just backtrack. Let's just sit for a minute, pausing and gently reflecting, not the hard thinking, but look at who I am. And so maybe I could share just a couple of those layers of me.
Please do.
Yeah. So just like you, just like everyone, I'm a person, I'm a human being, and I'm a parent. I've got a young family, and I'm a professional. So the 3 Ps, that's what I just invented there: a person, a parent, and a professional. I run an organization called Mindfulness Skills for Life. So that's the sort of top layer. That's the kind of my roles in life, if you like. And then there's another part of me, is the stuff that I like, the stuff that I do kind of out with those jobs. So I like reading, and I love gardening and being creative and dancing like no one's watching. And most of the time, thankfully, no one is watching. And so
you can do some dancing now if you like, and everybody will be watching.
That would be okay too, actually. That would be fine. So I have a sort of creative, a restful side, because those 3 Ps, those are quite busy elements of my life. So it's important to find balance and a place of nurture and recharging. So to balance up those busy parts of my life, I like creative things, restful things, restoring things and recharging things. But then that just tells you kind of what I do and kind of things that I like. And I came to this sort of quiet searching about, well, who am I? What sits underneath the doing and the liking and the occupation of space and time? And that was such a fascinating little dive into that. Yes, who am I? So I think there's a sort of essence of all of us, something that sits in my heart and my mind and my being. And it's like a golden thread. I came to this sort of imagery of a golden thread, the essence of me that fits into all of those domains. So the me that is me, when people get to know me, they'll see that I'm someone who takes time to create the conditions to live really fully without overfilling my life with stuff.
I think it's so easy to be guilty of filling your life with stuff, be it material stuff or doing stuff, or filling your valuable life hours with stuff.
Yeah, it can be quite consuming, and I think it can be addictive as well to fill up, and that glorification of busy. So I'm probably the opposite of all of that. I try to, through my practice and through my life experiences of mindfulness and practicing meditation, and absolutely the whole opposite of that in my life before that, you know, I can see that I'm someone who deeply cares about living a good life. But that word good comes with a package of simplicity, less complexity, with really deep connections, forming deep, meaningful, lasting connections with people in my life. So that's clients, that's my family, that's people that I meet and have a joy to meet. And really deeply connecting with the simple things, the small stuff, and recognizing the importance of those. So I'm someone who kind of underplays life a bit, but through that underplaying, I discover so much magic in the wonder of daily life and the magic of people, and actually the magic of myself as well, you know. So I've kind of constructed that, if you like, through creating conditions and living my life through values that are really important to me. So one is unbusyness, under scheduling, and the other is around connection, of trying to be a kind human. Now that takes a bit of practice actually in this busy life, and trying to really connect empathically with myself and all my packages and baggages in order to connect with other people. So that's a bit of me.
That's it. I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because when you say it, it sounds fairly simple, and yet it takes a lot of practice. What came to mind there for me as I was listening and dipping in of downtime listening to uptime listening, as I call it, is a quote that I put in my book from John Lennon: "Life is what happens while we're busy doing other things." So we're living life in the moment. So often, though, we are so occupied in those moments that we miss the life that we're living. And so, although it sounds simple, it really takes practice. So what was your journey? You kind of alluded to the fact that before this part of your life, it was not simple and unscheduled and practiced in that fullness of life. It was very busy. So what was the journey that brought you to this place here right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I've been very fortunate. I've had lots of interesting life experiences, and not always easy, just leveling that counter. You know, it's not a straightforward life being a human. And so I started off, before I was, if you like, a professional mindfulness and meditation teacher, I actually was a career scientist. So I did a degree in science. I kind of fortuitously fell into that place by failing at many things and not meeting entry requirements. So that path wasn't mapped out through my choice. It kind of happened through luck and timing, but that's what happens. I've seen that happen so many times in my life, and cultivating that quality of trusting what you don't know, So I kind of fell into a degree, and I quite liked it. I was reasonably good at it. So I thought, oh, I quite like to be this scientist lady. So I did a PhD, but again, I failed. I think I got in through the back door, actually, because there was no one else to fill the spot. And I was in the last chance saloon. And I appeared at the right time. So I got offered this PhD and was told many times that there were other better candidates than you know.
Or not.
Or not, exactly. So I took that opportunity. So there was a lot of studying, and then I got my first proper job kind of later in life with all these years of studying, and I was really lucky. I joined a great team, and we were researching diseases of the brain and body, and it was such a great job. I'm naturally curious. I was one of those why kids, why does this happen? And I love the attention to detail and that sense of knowing deeply. So I stayed in science and developed quite a successful career for about 15 years. And I was lucky again, or not lucky, noticing those language patterns. And I'm lucky. Maybe it wasn't lucky, maybe it was the path. But I got promoted in a very early stage in my scientific career. And I ended up heading up a group with a very high profile project. It's multi-million pounds. It was quite unheard of in that time, but the work was quite important. So it thrust me into this place of kind of, woof, I've gone from small bench scientist to a huge amount of responsibility and setting up projects, managing staff, juggling millions of pounds of money, and
that's
having
quite different, isn't it? It's one thing being a scientist and being curious and being skilled at your profession. It's quite a different thing to herd human beings in the same direction.
Yes. And there was a few human beings to be herded, and lots of learning, Lisa, lots of learning from the ground up, because we were on a schedule, we were on a timer, and there's deliverables and milestones. I know you know this stuff. So it was great, but it came at an emotional cost over time, actually. So with that inexperience of management, but learning every day, because that's what my training and research is. If I don't know how to do it, I'll find out how to do it. And at that time, having a habitual pattern of I'll do it well, I'll do it better than you, and I'll do it perfectly. So seeing that undercurrent of striving, completing, perfectionism, no option to fail.
That's exhausting, surely.
It got exhausting. That's the long story short, was that a few years down that path of working exceptionally long hours physically takes its toll, doesn't it? Because we're a machine. That's the whole point. We're not robots. We're a human flesh working machine that needs to rest. But then my mind got really good at thinking, planning, projecting, forecasting. And then it got good at, when I made a mistake, ruminating, regretting, criticizing, judging myself, comparing, and that lives here. So in that working environment, I had two faces. One that probably looked a bit like this: everything's great, everything's going well, it's really successful. But underneath that, there was another version of me that was very vulnerable, tired, exhausted. And over years, I had developed, and that's what our brain does, it learns through habits and practice. I had developed a capacity to constantly think and analyze, and I had used those as weapons against myself, actually. But no one would have seen that face, because you just hide it. You don't talk about your mind health or your emotional strengths, especially when they're small. So that was tough. That was really a tough time to live in that sort of duplicitous way.
I guess a lot of people don't realize that the mind's main function is to solve problems. And we're going back to when we were in caveman days. Our mind is constantly trying to solve problems and negate risk, isn't it? Run away from great big hairy mammoths, that type of thing. So it's constantly looking for that around us, and the more it's what you focus on grows. Where your attention goes, energy flows. So the more you're focusing on that risk, problem, risk, there's got to come a point where you go, whoa, stop the bus.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And there's such an irony. I was in this world of brain science, and we talk about disease processes that start in the body and then they go and affect the brain. And then when the brain is damaged, the animal, the organism starts to fall apart. Now, there was a mirror life there.
Yes.
That was happening to me, except it started from the top down. So that mind and body connection runs in both ways. What happens in the body affects our brain, will affect our mind. What happens in the mind shapes our brain and will affect our body. So I didn't see it. I didn't know. But you're right, this tricky brain, it's not our fault. And this is the thing that many people don't know. They think they are the way they are and it's their fault. They're accountable, they're to blame. But they're not. It's our tricky human brain. It's on that red alert. It's not designed to make us happy. It's designed to keep us alive. And that explosion came for me. That reality was when I was pregnant with my first child. So I was still working, and someone said to me, you know, we don't know that you're in the best place. And I had to agree with them and say, yeah, you know, I'm really vulnerable just now, and I want to be a good mum. I want to be a good enough mum and caretake my baby, but I'm not strong myself. And thankfully, someone really listened to me, because I had started to sprinkle those conversations with people that I trusted, but it didn't land in the right way or at the right time. But then someone heard, someone saw me and then said, I think we can help. So I'd been living like this for about 6 years, This is the thing. And
it becomes a habitual though, doesn't it? It's so easy to fall into that pattern. And also, I guess, you know, you were in a high profile role with huge responsibility, and to actually say, hang on a minute, I'm not feeling my best.
No.
I'm living my best life and I'm about to be a mum is a big admission to make when you are in a high profile role. You know, you have a tendency towards perfectionism, being the best, all those things going on. That must have been quite a difficult thing to do.
It is, and to show up authentically, to ask for help when everything or everybody or lots of people think you're okay. You're the leader, you know, you're okay. You're the smiler, you're the pleaser, the fitter inner. So it does take courage, but it's an important conversation. And it's one that I found through my experience, you know, sometimes the right door doesn't open first time.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't give up, you know. And that's hard when you're in that sort of threat brain mode or feeling vulnerable and wishing desperately to somehow return to the person or a version of you that had less chaos and difficulty in their life. So through a pathway, so I was so aware. This is the thing, I could see and articulate everything that was going on. So I was very mindful. And I knew it wasn't broken and I knew it wasn't depressed, but I just couldn't stop thinking and planning and giving myself a hard time. And I got eventually referred to a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course. And it was facilitated by a wonderful psychologist and two helpers, facilitators. And that is when I had my epiphany, oh, things can be different.
Yeah.
Who knew? All these years I have practiced thinking, analysing, judging, criticising, the what if, when, will, why, you know, all of that stuff, which has a great place in a role of a scientist. It was a real, I think I said those words, was a real weapon to myself. And we learned the skill of, you know, this mind is like a sky, and all of the thoughts, they're like the weather. And sometimes we have sunny weather and sometimes we have cloudy weather, stormy weather. It can rain for days. And I'm like, yeah, it's been raining for many months now. And he said, what choices do you have? What do you mean, what choices? When a thought pops up, what happens to you? And I'm like, I think about it, I analyze it, I argue back with it, I try and fix it, I swap it, I change. And he said, what if you did nothing? What do you mean? What if I did nothing? What if you didn't do all of those things? what would happen? And I said, I think the conversation would stop. And he said, well, do you want to practice that? Do you want to do a little experiment around that? Do you want to give it a go for me between now and next week? And I said, okay. He said, so we'll give this a language, we'll give it a framework, we'll give it a structure, because that's what we do in our mindfulness sessions. And that's your practice. And I want you to practice smiling more when you do it, rather than having a judgy face or a critical face. And after the end of the week, all those thoughts and conversations from 6 years, those habits, literally melted.
Incredible.
It was incredible. It was really incredible. And that took me on that next journey of why do we not know about this as human beings? Why do we not know about how to work the most sophisticated instrument of our lives that we will ever have the opportunity to know and help us get to know ourselves, which is our brain, our mind, and our body, because they're all one. They're not separate in any way.
Isn't it interesting? I got a little picture there that came in of a brand new car that you get a manual with, and somebody who comes out and tells you how to work all of the little gadgets in it. Yeah. Why don't we teach? I mean, we do start to teach this stuff in schools now, but why has this not always been the case? You know, that we, and there are books out there about mindfulness. So I'm not saying there hasn't been a manual and there are no children being taught this.
No.
It just seems a fundamental part of our education as in the human condition.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's so true, because if you look at me in those days, that outward facing person was very confident, you know, had it all taped up, had the holidays, had the lifestyle, had the busyness, the richness, but wasn't satisfied, wasn't stable or content. And actually, the majority of the people that I have the privilege and joy, and it is a privilege and joy to meet and work with and learn from, they're all adults. They're adults just like me. Yeah. People in their 30s, 40s, 50s. An amazing woman who touched my life, 85. And wow. We did an 8-week mindfulness course. And she wrote me this letter. I've just gone goosebumpy, just the memory of it. If only I had known. That was the start. That was the start. I know, I can feel it. I can feel it. If only I had known was the start and the end of her letter. So you're right. Yeah. We are not taught the fundamentals of being human, and being a whole human means that we should expect difficulty in our lives.
Yeah. It's not all going to be hearts and roses, is it?
But we can accept it when we know that we've got an established safe base, a toolkit to resource us from and help us respond to those challenges.
We know how all the gadgets work in our very sophisticated
know which
vehicle.
buttons to press. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? You know, the most precious, the very most precious vehicle that we have is
us.
Is us. This whole mechanism that is our human experience, our human body, our mind, our brain. And yet we do spend so much more attention knowing how to work our new Mac computer or our brand new car and all the gadgets. And yet we don't spend that time on the most valuable, most precious vehicle, which is us. Or we might do it in parts. We might go to the gym, or we might look at our diet, or we might do a little bit of mindfulness. We don't look at our holistic wellness.
And I think in a sustainable way. I think that's it. So, you know, I feel that our conversations come in a beautiful circle there, because it was like, who am I now? And we've seen a bit of that. And then how did you get here? And it's that sense of the meeting of both of those spheres, is that actually we can have such a full life, but the fullness comes from within. It comes from the depth of knowing ourselves and really loving ourselves. That's a brave statement, loving the one that you are, no matter what you've got, who you are, what your home looks like. It's this natural wellspring. And when you can do that, then it opens up the doorway to really connect deeply with others. And that fills you up, that fills up your life, that goodness. And you can appreciate that then it's okay for things to be less complicated, because the fullness, the goodness doesn't come from, as we said, the stuff. It comes from the small stuff that actually becomes very huge when you allow your attention to be with that. But it's a big process, isn't it? It's that getting our mind strong, being able to see and listen to what's around us, and knowing that we have the potential to change. I think that's the thing that hoodwinked me. I was this lovely version, life was easy, and then situation happened, and then you think you're stuck. So we don't often look at our lives in that sort of conscious way. Who do we want to be? How do we get to that? And what do we want to fill our lives with? We just kind of trundle automatically from day to day, week to week.
Do you feel perhaps the whole staying at home, the whole recent experience that we've all had over the last 18 months has perhaps heightened those questions within many people?
I think it certainly could have opened the doorway to ask those questions. I mean, that's a massive thing in itself, isn't it? Because that experience on a day-by-day basis unfolded in very different ways in my house. Even with that big emotional toolkit and resources, some days were great, some days were just awful, plain awful. But I think if it has opened that question in a helpful way, then you just wish that people can look at their lives and be supported to make choices that help them. I think everyone's experiences will be different because our lives are different. But I think, my wish for people is that they get, because I care deeply about people. I just want people to do well, but it can take a lot of resources, can take a lot of conversations and support to grow into that place, just as I was supported for many years, actually.
The reason that comes to mind, I was talking to one of our corporate clients, and they were saying that actually they've had a huge shift in their staff population, where people have realized they don't want to work long hours, they don't want to be traveling to the office every day. And so that's why I'm wondering whether this is a little bit of a seed change that maybe has shown people there is another way of being, and they might not be able to label that as being more mindful, but maybe their awareness of what their wants and needs are as a human are starting to raise to the surface, as opposed to just being on the hamster wheel. Maybe we are potentially opening those doors. So you had your epiphany moment. So how did you move from that to where you are now, running a really successful business and a successful practice that helps so many people?
Yeah, well, that was tricky. I basically, through time and effort and working things out, made a choice at week 1 of this mindfulness and compassion focused course to leave my job. So I was pregnant. I remember saying to you, I was pregnant at the time, and I made a commitment to myself that I wanted to learn how to teach this stuff through my own practice, so that I could help other people who were just like me, people who were trying their best in life and worked really hard, but just didn't know how to work the machine, the whole of themselves well. So that's what I did. Over time, I very quickly took on an opportunity to leave science, and I took up a degree shortly after the birth of my first son, and that was a degree in a master's degree in mindfulness, compassion, wisdom, and insight. It's wonderful. It's I love learning, and I love growing, and through that degree process, I went on my mindfulness teacher training pathway, and and decided to start up on my own. So that was quite a big, brave step from someone who's always kind of worked and had that steadiness of financial security. But it felt so right to want to share, hey, did you know you get to choose what your brain does? And when you know how to do that, your mind and your life can be different. So that's the transition that I did. And I've not looked back since, actually, because I get to meet such amazing people, wonderful humans, just like me, just like you, who want to just do well in life. Again, coming back that metaphor or that thread that's in my mind, an image of, living well doesn't mean to be full and busy and complicated. But it can be like that until you, as we've just said, know the choices that are available to you. And so I've been running Mindfulness Skills for Life, I think since 2016, 15 or 16, something like that. And first in Scotland and then down here in Lincolnshire. Yeah.
And so for people who are interested in what you're talking about here, how can they get involved in what you're doing?
Well, there's lots of opportunities, and I think Lincolnshire seems to be a nice bed where there's some lovely mindfulness teachers, and I think there's a growing community of well-being in our county, which is wonderful. And just caveating this word mindfulness, I think it's everywhere. So, and it might not be a comfy word for everybody. So, and it's used in many different contexts. So for me, it feels just like mind training your mind to train your brain to do different jobs. So it's not a word we should get too caught up in. We don't need to hinge so much on that. But, for us, we have a little menu of wellbeing offerings that people can come and try. We have taster sessions, creative sessions with art or doodling and music. And we have little groups that we run. And I think what I love about them is that sense of real togetherness, this real humanness that you can show up exactly who you are. You don't have to be perfect. You can just come as you are. You get a good welcome and a really valued listening space. As I said, that was important to me in my rediscovery of me journey, just being heard, being listened to and understood from that real heart place. So that's what we offer, but there's other people who can support you too.
And if people are further away than Lincolnshire, are you still going to continue to offer things online?
Yeah, that's one thing that people have loved throughout the time at home since last March. We, like everyone else, had to, there's that word pivot, whatever that meant at the time. It was more like a scrambling of, I wonder what we're going to do. Knowing that there was a real need to keep supporting people, but balance that with being that parent and professional providing home care. So we have grown a wonderful, such a beautiful tribe of people who we meet online. And actually, we've been having those big conversations about what do we do with our group, because we've really supported one another and learned from one another in that online space. So, and we're from Scotland, England, Wales, sometimes America as well, actually. So we wouldn't be able to meet in a little room, even if we wished to. So we're going to keep our online offerings open and hopefully return to face-to-face teaching as well. So it's really given us opportunities to reflect on possibilities.
So what next then, Sans? What's next? What's your aspiration?
So many. I've got a little white space of dreams and aspirations. One of the things that we've touched on in the conversation is the value of receiving that education about ourselves as being a human, and it is covered to an extent in schools, the curriculum content, but I think there's a real place for developing in a real consolidated way an education, a consistent, not a module that's taught for 3 months or something, but a consistent place where we're practicing skills of self-awareness and what that means from the inside out. So that, you know, down the line, I won't see so many adults because there wouldn't be that need, you know, because we have that knowing. So, and there's some great organizations that are working to do that. The Mindfulness in Schools Project, Youth Mindfulness, these are amazing organizations that I'm part of. And we want to build that sort of knowledge in schools from our young people, because kids naturally know, they're very intuitive, but we need that space to be a bit bigger, a bit more consistent. Yeah.
So as I ask all of my guests before we end our chat for today, what is your top tip for life, Sans?
My top tip for my life, which helps keep things steady, is to keep it simple. Really see what it's like to live your life with this sense of not needing to know too far ahead. Really being present, giving a single moment your attention, whether it's a moment in nature, whether it's, you know, you and I smile a lot, looking at someone's face and really seeing them and allowing that joy to drip in. So savor tiny moments, make them bigger in your life. That's one thing that's really helpful for me.
I love it. And for anybody who's watched any of the previous interviews, you will know that it's my fundamental belief that as human beings, we have an innate need to be seen, heard and loved. And that kind of just appeals to that, doesn't it? Really being acknowledged and witnessed. Yeah.
And that's what I've just gone goosebumpy. I feel those words. And that's it. When you hit upon, you know, when you move out of that headspace and you move into living your life in a joined up place, not overthinking, but feeling your life happening, you know, that's what connects us together, isn't it? That's the thing that really we can take that home in our hearts at the end of the day. And everything could go wrong in the day, but you can recall, you have a choice to recall that one moment that's made a difference. And that can change your mind, can change your brain and give you a great feeling.
Ultimately changing your life.
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.